I am Arya, 27 years old now, but I still remember the day my own sister plunged scissors into my shoulder. The worst part wasn't even the physical pain. It was my parents standing there, blood dripping onto our kitchen floor, telling me it was my fault. At 16, I walked away from that house and never looked back. 11 years of building my own life, and now they want me back. Not because they miss me, because my absence makes them look bad. Let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had to choose between family and your own well-being. I grew up in a middle-class suburban neighborhood in Seattle, in a blue house with white trim and a perfectly manicured lawn. From the outside, we looked like the ideal American family. My father, Thomas, worked as an engineer at a tech company, always dressed in crisp button-down shirts, even on weekends. My mother, Grace, ran a small boutique downtown, her appearance always flawless, not a hair out of place. Then there was my sister, Jade, 2 years older than me, and seemingly perfect in my parents' eyes. The favoritism started early. I have memories from when I was just 4 or 5 years old, watching Jade receive praise for the smallest accomplishments, while my achievements went unnoticed. When Jade learned to ride a bike, my father took the entire day off work to teach her cheering and recording videos. When it was my turn the following year, he delegated the task to a neighbor's teenage son because he was too busy with an important project. Birthday celebrations marked the disparity clearly. Jade's birthdays were extravagant affairs with custom cakes, elaborate decorations, and at least 20 guests. My birthdays, if remembered at all, usually consisted of a store-bought cake and maybe two friends allowed over for a few hours. On my 10th birthday, my parents actually forgot completely. I sat waiting in my room dressed in my favorite outfit while they took Jade shopping for a school dance. They returned at 8 in the evening, and when I tearfully reminded them what day it was, my mother simply said, "We can do something next weekend," before asking Jade to model her new dress. School events followed the same pattern. My parents never missed any of Jade's soccer games or choir performances. They sat front row cameras ready, beaming with pride. Meanwhile, when I won the district-wide spelling bee in 5th grade, neither of them attended. Work emergencies, they claimed, though they had managed to take a long lunch the previous week to watch Jade receive a participation certificate in the science fair. By the time I reached high school, the pattern was so established that I stopped expecting anything different. When my father taught Jade to drive, he was patient and encouraging. He laughed off her mistakes and praised her progress. 6 months later, when my turn came, he gripped the dashboard so tightly, his knuckles turned white, sighing heavily at every minor error. After just 3 lessons, he declared, "I don't have time for this," and hired a driving instructor instead. Shopping trips with my mother showed the same disparity. She and Jade would spend entire Saturdays at the mall returning with bags from expensive stores. When I needed clothes, my mother would hand me her credit card with strict instructions, nothing over $50 total, and direct me to the nearest thrift shop or discount store. "You just don't care about appearances like Jade does," she would explain when I questioned the difference. I tried everything to win their approval. When praise for my natural intelligence didn't work, I pushed myself harder academically. I maintained a perfect 4.0 GPA. I joined every academic club and competition. I stayed up until 2 or 3 in the morning studying, hoping that excellence might finally make them see me. It was during my freshman year that I found an unexpected ally in Mrs. Garcia, my art teacher. She noticed my exhaustion one day and asked me to stay after class. Instead of lecturing me, she simply asked, "Are you okay, Arya?" No one had asked me that question in years, and something about her genuine concern broke through my carefully constructed walls. I didn't tell her everything, but I shared enough that she began keeping an eye on me. Mrs. Garcia introduced me to photography, lending me one of the school's cameras when she saw my interest. "Sometimes it helps to look at the world through a different lens," she told me. She was right. Behind the camera, I found freedom. I could control what was in frame and what wasn't. I could focus on beauty amid chaos. I began documenting everything: sunlight through trees, strangers' expressions, urban decay, moments of connection between others that I yearned for myself. Photography became my escape and my evidence. When my parents dismissed my experiences, I had images that proved I existed, that I saw things worth capturing, that I had value. I created a visual diary of my life that no one could deny or diminish. It was the first time I felt any power in my powerless situation. As my photographic skills improved and I began receiving recognition for my work, Jade's attitude toward me deteriorated further. What had been mild annoyance turned into active sabotage. The first major incident happened during my sophomore year when I spent weeks working on a digital media project. The assignment required us to create a short documentary, and I had chosen to focus on elderly residents at a local nursing home, capturing their stories and wisdom. The night before it was due, I left my laptop briefly to take a shower. When I returned, I found Jade closing it with a satisfied smirk. "What were you doing?" I asked, instantly suspicious. "Just checking my email," she replied, walking away. When I opened my laptop, I discovered all my project files had been deleted, not just moved to the trash, completely wiped using a file shredder program. Months of interviews, carefully edited footage, all gone. When I confronted Jade screaming through tears, she simply shrugged and said, "Prove it." When our parents came running, Jade immediately claimed I was attacking her out of nowhere. "Aria is having another one of her episodes," my mother said dismissively. "She probably forgot to save her work and needs someone to blame." "Technology fails sometimes," my father added. "That's why you should always back up your work like Jade does." I had backed it up on an external drive that had mysteriously disappeared from my desk drawer that same evening. It reappeared 3 days later in the garden, damaged beyond repair by rain. School became another battleground as Jade began spreading rumors about me. She told people I cheated on tests, that I was obsessive and unstable, that I had problems with lying for attention. Being 2 years older gave her words weight, and I found former friendly acquaintances suddenly avoiding me. A group of Jade's friends began calling me Crazy Aria in the hallways, loud enough for me to hear, but quiet enough that teachers rarely caught it. Family gatherings became opportunities for Jade to steal credit for my photography. When relatives commented on photos I had taken, that my parents had actually framed a rare acknowledgement of my work, Jade would jump in with, "I helped her set up that shot," or "I taught her that technique." My parents would beam at her, proud of her generosity in helping her younger sister. I learned to stay quiet during these moments, knowing that any correction would be labeled as me being difficult or competitive. Dinner time in our house was particularly painful. One evening during junior year, I came home excited about placing as a finalist in a prestigious youth photography contest. I waited until everyone was seated, then shared my news, hoping this external validation might finally impress my parents. "That's nice, dear," my mother said without looking up from her plate. Then immediately pivoting, "Jade got a B+ on her history test today. The professor said her essay showed real insight." "A B+ isn't that impressive," I said before I could stop myself. The table went silent. My father put down his fork. "Aria," he said in that warning tone I knew too well, "your sister works very hard. Not everyone finds school as easy as you do. You should be supportive instead of trying to one-up her all the time." "I wasn't one-upping her," I protested. "I was telling you about my contest before you changed the subject." "See how she always twists things," Jade said to my parents, her eyes wide with manufactured innocence. "This is what I deal with all the time." "Why can't you be more like your sister?" my father asked, shaking his head. "Jade never tries to get attention this way." "You're too sensitive," my mother added. "We were going to talk about your contest too, but you never give us a chance before overreacting." This was a lie. They had never circled back to my achievements in 16 years, but I had learned arguing only made things worse. I excused myself from the table claiming homework and retreated to my room where I could process my feelings through my camera lens instead. As the emotional isolation at home intensified, I began building a small support network at school. Taylor became my closest friend after we were paired for a chemistry project. Unlike the other students who believed Jade's rumors, Taylor took the time to know me. She was straightforward and loyal, and her home became my sanctuary. The first time I visited Taylor's house, I was shocked by the family dynamics. Her parents asked both of us about our days and actually listened to the answers. They praised specific things about our chemistry project, rather than offering generic comments. When Taylor's younger brother came home with an average grade, they didn't criticize, but instead asked how they could help him improve. There was no comparison between siblings, no obvious favorite. Is it always like this? I asked Taylor when we were alone in her room. Like what? She asked, genuinely confused. Everyone being nice to each other. Your parents caring about what you say. Taylor gave me a long look. Aria, this is normal. What happens at your house isn't. That conversation planted a seed. Maybe the problem wasn't me. Maybe what I had accepted as normal family dynamics were actually something else entirely. I began paying closer attention to other families, noticing the differences between healthy relationships and what I experienced at home. It created an internal conflict, a loyalty to the family I had, versus a growing awareness of what family should be. Everything changed during the spring of my junior year, when I was accepted to a prestigious summer photography program at New York University. Only 20 students nationwide were selected, and participation virtually guaranteed college scholarship opportunities. When the acceptance email arrived, I printed it out with shaking hands, certain that this external validation from a major university would finally make my parents proud. I waited until dinner when everyone was present to share the news. I explained the selectivity of the program, the opportunity to study with renowned photographers, the potential impact on my future. As I spoke, I watched my parents' faces for any sign of pride or excitement. My mother glanced at my father, who simply continued eating. "That's in New York?" he finally asked. "Yes," I replied, hope still flickering. "They provide dormitory housing for the 6-week program." "Sounds expensive," my mother commented. "It's fully funded," I explained. "Everything is covered, even the flight. I just need your permission to go since I'm still a minor." "We'll think about it," my father said dismissively. "Jade, how did your college tour go today?" Just like that, my moment was over. But Jade wasn't finished. As my parents discussed her campus visit, I saw something dark flicker across her face as she watched me fold the acceptance letter and put it in my pocket. Later that night, I heard my parents in the living room discussing the program. I paused in the hallway out of sight to listen. "I don't like the idea of her going across the country," my mother was saying. "It would look bad if we don't let her go," my father replied. "It's a prestigious program. She'll be impossible to live with if she gets even more praise for her photography. You know how she gets when she thinks she's special." "We can let her go," my father decided. "But we need to make sure Jade gets something equally impressive this summer. Maybe that internship at your friend's design firm." I slipped back to my room, a familiar emptiness settling in my chest. Even this achievement would become about balancing attention with Jade. 2 days later, I began packing some of my camera equipment in preparation for the program, which was still 6 weeks away. My excitement about the opportunity had overcome my disappointment in my parents' reaction. I was carefully wrapping my favorite lens when I noticed my primary camera was missing from its case. After searching my room thoroughly, I reluctantly went to ask if anyone had seen it. I found Jade alone in the kitchen. "Have you seen my Nikon?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. A small smile played at the corner of her mouth. "Why would I have seen your camera?" Something in her tone sent a chill through me. I returned to my room and continued searching, growing increasingly frantic. Finally, I looked under my bed and found my camera, or what remained of it. The lens was shattered, the body cracked open, memory card missing. Next to it lay the acceptance letter from the photography program, torn into pieces. White-hot rage rushed through me. In that moment, 16 years of being diminished, gaslighted, and sabotaged crystallized into a single point of fury. I grabbed the damaged camera and stormed back to the kitchen. "What did you do?" I demanded, holding up the ruined equipment. Jade looked at the camera, then at me, her expression shifting from surprise to calculation. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Stop lying. No one else would do this. You destroyed my camera and my acceptance letter." "You're crazy," she said, backing up against the counter. "Mom and Dad are right about you having mental problems. I have never done anything to hurt you," I said, my voice shaking. "Why do you hate me so much?" "Because everything comes so easily to you," she suddenly shouted. Your grades, your photography, everything. And you pretend to be so innocent and perfect all the time. Nothing has ever been easy for me in this house, I replied, tears streaming down my face. You've had mom and dad's love and support your entire life while I've had nothing. Poor little Arya, always the victim, Jade sneered, stepping toward me. You think you're so special with your stupid photography program. You think you're going to leave this summer and become famous while I'm stuck here. I'm not going to let that happen. She lunged forward, suddenly shoving me backward. I stumbled, the broken camera falling from my hands. Something in me snapped. For the first time in my life, I pushed back. Don't touch me, I shouted, giving her a hard shove that sent her stumbling back against the counter. Jade's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in rage. She grabbed something from the counter behind her, a pair of scissors my mother used for crafting the blades long and sharp. Before I could process what was happening, she lunged forward. I felt a sharp, searing pain in my shoulder. Looking down in disbelief, I saw the scissors protruding from my flesh blood, quickly soaking through my t-shirt. The pain hit me a second later, intense and burning. I screamed more from shock than pain and staggered backward. Jade stood frozen, her face a mask of shock and something else, satisfaction. The front door opened and closed, and my parents walked in, grocery bags in hand. They took in the scene, me bleeding, scissors in my shoulder, Jade standing there empty-handed. What happened? My father demanded. She attacked me, Jade said immediately, her voice trembling with fake fear. I was just defending myself. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She stabbed me. Look at me, I'm bleeding. My mother rushed to Jade's side, putting her arm around her. Are you okay, honey? Did she hurt you? I stood there, blood dripping onto the kitchen floor, watching my mother comfort my attacker. My father approached me, his face hard. What did you do to provoke her? He asked. The absurdity of the question left me speechless for a moment. She destroyed my camera and my acceptance letter, I finally managed. When I confronted her, she stabbed me. You always have to push things too far, my mother said, looking at me with disgust. This is your fault for antagonizing your sister. I need to go to the hospital, I said, wincing as I carefully touched the area around the wound. The scissors were still embedded in my shoulder, and I knew enough not to remove them. Don't be dramatic, my father said. It's just a scratch. There are scissors in my shoulder, I shouted. My father roughly examined the wound, causing me to cry out in pain. He pulled the scissors out without warning, causing a fresh gush of blood. See, just a small puncture. Clean yourself up. I pressed a kitchen towel against the wound, fighting back tears of pain and disbelief. I need stitches. This is exactly the attention-seeking behavior we're tired of, my mother said. Jade made a mistake, but you pushed her to it. Now go clean up before you stain the floor. I looked at each of their faces, my sister's barely concealed triumph, my mother's annoyance, my father's dismissal. Something inside me broke permanently in that moment. These people would never protect me. They would never love me. In their eyes, my bleeding was an inconvenience, my pain an exaggeration. With the towel still pressed to my shoulder, I went to my room and called Taylor. I couldn't stop the sobs as I explained what happened. 20 minutes later, her parents arrived. When they saw my injury, her father's face went pale with anger. We're taking you to the emergency room right now, he said, helping me to their car, while Taylor's mother tried to speak with my parents. At the hospital, the doctor's face grew serious as he examined the wound. This is a deep puncture, he said. How did this happen? I caught Taylor's eye, then looked away. I fell on some scissors. I lied, protecting my family even then. The doctor looked skeptical but didn't press. You'll need stitches, and we'll have to check for nerve damage. You're lucky it missed major blood vessels. As they prepared to treat me, a social worker came to speak with me privately. She asked gentle but probing questions about my home life. Despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to tell the full truth. Years of conditioning to protect the family image were too deeply ingrained. I repeated my story about falling, though I don't think she believed me. When I returned home that night, my parents acted as if nothing had happened. The kitchen floor was spotless, my blood washed away like my existence in their lives. Jade stayed in her room, and neither of my parents asked how many stitches I had received or if I was in pain. I lay in bed that night, my shoulder throbbing despite the painkillers, and realized with absolute clarity I needed to leave. The 3 days following the stabbing were the longest of my life. I moved through the house like a ghost, avoiding Jade completely, and speaking to my parents only when necessary. They seemed relieved by my silence, interpreting it as acceptance of their version of events, rather than the calculated withdrawal it really was. Behind this quiet exterior, my mind was racing. I spent hours texting with Taylor, making plans. I reached out to Mrs. Garcia carefully, explaining my situation, without mentioning the stabbing directly. She immediately offered to help however she could. "You're not alone in this, Aria," she told me after school, her eyes full of concern. "Whatever you decide to do, I'll support you." I knew I needed my essential documents: birth certificate, social security card, health insurance information. These were kept in my father's home office in a filing cabinet. I waited until both my parents were out Jade at a friend's house and searched until I found them tucking them into a secret pocket I'd sewn into my backpack. Next came the practical considerations. I had about $1,200 saved from my weekend job at a local coffee shop. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. I packed only what I could carry: some clothes, my backup camera equipment that Jade hadn't found, my laptop, and a few precious mementos. Everything else could be replaced. The hardest part was emotional preparing to walk away from everything familiar, even if it was toxic. Despite their treatment of me, these were the only parents I had ever known. This was the only home I remembered. There was a certain security in familiar pain. On the third night after the stabbing, I wrote a letter explaining my decision to leave. I didn't pour out my heart or list their failures. I simply stated that I didn't feel safe after what had happened, that I needed space, and that I would be okay. I left it on my perfectly made bed. At 2 in the morning, I silently slipped out of the house with my backpack and a small duffel bag. Taylor was waiting in her car at the end of the block. As we drove away, I didn't look back at the house. I couldn't. The weight of 16 years felt simultaneously like shackles breaking and a chasm opening beneath me. "You can stay with us as long as you need," Taylor assured me as we drove to her house. Her parents had already prepared their guest room. "I can't impose forever," I replied, "but thank you for everything." The next morning, Taylor's mother gently suggested I consider legal emancipation. "It would give you protection," she explained. "They couldn't force you to come back." Mrs. Garcia had connections with a legal aid society that helped minors in crisis situations. She arranged for me to meet with a lawyer who specialized in emancipation cases. The lawyer was a kind woman named Andrea, who listened carefully to my story. "Do you have evidence of neglect or abuse?" she asked. I hesitated. "I have the medical records from the stabbing, and teachers who can testify about patterns of neglect." "That's a start," she said, "but emancipation isn't easy to obtain. Courts prefer to keep families together." "I can't go back there," I said simply. Andrea nodded. "Then we'll build the strongest case possible." The legal process was grueling. I had to prove I could support myself financially, that I had a safe place to live, and that I would continue my education. The school's guidance counselor helped me arrange independent study options to finish my junior year while the case proceeded. My parents' response to the emancipation petition surprised me. Rather than fighting to keep me, they seemed almost relieved. They contested it only minimally enough to maintain appearances. But their statement to the court was telling: "Aria has always been difficult and independent. If this is what she wants, we won't stand in her way." Their easy dismissal of me hurt more than I expected, but it also simplified the process. The judge granted my emancipation with conditions: I had to maintain my education report regularly, to a court-appointed counselor, and demonstrate financial independence. With emancipation came new challenges. I couldn't continue living with Taylor's family indefinitely, and their house was too far from my work. Mrs. Garcia helped me find a tiny studio apartment within walking distance of both school and the coffee shop. It was in an old building with questionable heating and plumbing, but it was mine, my first real safe space. The financial reality was harsh. My coffee shop job barely covered rent and utilities. Food became a luxury. I learned to stretch a bag of rice and beans for a week, to find day-old bread at bakery discounts, to choose between paying the electric bill and buying new film for my camera. Sleep was difficult in those early months. I had nightmares about the stabbing, waking up feeling the phantom pain in my shoulder. I developed hypervigilance, startling at loud noises, and always sitting with my back to walls. Trust didn't come easily anymore. When people were kind, I searched for hidden motives. But gradually, something beautiful began to happen. People stepped up in ways I never expected. Taylor and her family included me in their Sunday dinners. Mrs. Garcia accidentally ordered too many photography supplies and insisted I take the extras. My manager at the coffee shop created a new social media photographer position, paying me extra to take pictures for their Instagram account. My coworkers became friends who listened without judgment. My classmates, away from Jade's influence, discovered the real me. Slowly, I built a network of support, a found family of people who chose to care about me rather than being obligated by blood. When senior year began that fall, I threw myself into academics and photography with renewed purpose. Every A on a paper, every photograph accepted into a student showcase felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I applied to colleges seeking scholarships and financial aid, determined that my past wouldn't limit my future. High school graduation arrived with bittersweet emotions. As I sat among my classmates in cap and gown, I scanned the audience, some part of me still hoping to see my parents despite everything. They weren't there, of course. But in their place was a rowdy cheering section: Taylor and her family, Mrs. Garcia, and her husband, my coffee shop manager, and co-workers and classmates who had become friends. When they called my name, the eruption of applause brought unexpected tears to my eyes. As I accepted my diploma, I realized something profound: I wasn't missing family at my graduation. My family was right there cheering me on, the family I had built for myself. With high school behind me and multiple scholarship offers in hand, I chose to attend Northwestern University in Chicago. The city was far enough from Seattle to feel like a true fresh start, and the university's arts program had an excellent reputation. The day I boarded the plane, Taylor and Mrs. Garcia came to see me off. "I'm so proud of you," Mrs. Garcia said, hugging me tightly. "Remember, courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about moving forward despite the fear." "Call us the minute you land," Taylor insisted. "And I'm visiting for fall break, no arguments." Chicago greeted me with its bustling energy and Midwestern practicality. The university campus felt enormous compared to my high school, the buildings grand and imposing. For the first time in my life, no one knew me as Jade's little sister or that girl with family problems. I could define myself on my own terms. My dorm assignment paired me with Sarah, a music major from Detroit with a loud laugh and kind eyes. Within days of meeting, she had drawn me out of my shell with her genuine interest and complete lack of judgment. "So you're emancipated?" she asked when I carefully explained my family situation. "That's intense, but also kind of badass. You took control of your life when most kids are just worrying about prom dates." Her matter-of-fact acceptance made it easier to share parts of my story with others. I learned that vulnerability didn't always lead to rejection or exploitation. Sometimes it created deeper connections. My photography classes challenged and inspired me. Professor Amanda Coleman noticed my work, immediately praising my eye for composition, but pushing me to take more risks with subject matter. "You capture isolation beautifully," she told me after reviewing my portfolio. "But I sense you're holding back. Great art comes from the places that scare us most." Under her mentorship, I began working on a series focused on resilience. I photographed urban renewal projects, plants growing through concrete, homeless individuals creating community, and elderly people learning new skills. The theme resonated deeply with my own experience, allowing me to process my past through my art. During sophomore year, I took a psychology class as an elective and found myself fascinated by the discussions of family dynamics and trauma. After one particularly intense lecture on emotional abuse, I approached the professor about resources for survivors. "Are these resources for a project?" she asked gently. "For me," I admitted. I left home at 16 after years of complicated family dynamics. She recommended the university's counseling center, which offered services on a sliding scale for students. The following week, I met Diane, the therapist, who would help me navigate the complex landscape of my emotions for the next several years. Therapy was harder than I expected. Excavating 16 years of gaslighting and emotional neglect meant confronting painful truths I had buried to survive. There were sessions where I couldn't stop crying, others, where anger made my entire body shake. Diane guided me through it all with patience and insight. Boundaries aren't selfish, she told me during one session when I expressed guilt about cutting contact with my family. They're necessary for healthy relationships. You aren't punishing your parents by protecting yourself. You're establishing the conditions under which you can safely engage with them if you choose to. Learning to set boundaries extended beyond my family. I began recognizing when friendships felt one-sided or when romantic interests showed red flags similar to my family's behavior patterns. I turned down invitations that didn't feel right, spoke up when someone's comment hurt me, and slowly learned to ask for what I needed. In my junior year, I met Daniel in a documentary filmmaking class. He was quiet but confident, with thoughtful eyes and a talent for capturing authentic moments on camera. Our first conversation lasted 3 hours, moving from film techniques to personal philosophies, without either of us noticing the time passing. Daniel had his own complicated background parents, who divorced bitterly when he was 12, shuttling between households where he felt like an inconvenience. He understood trauma without my having to explain it in detail. "I notice you always check the exits when we enter a room," he commented on our third date. I tensed, preparing for criticism. "Is that weird?" "No," he said simply. "It's how you keep yourself safe. We all have our ways." Dating Daniel taught me that healthy love doesn't rush or demand. He never pushed for details I wasn't ready to share, respected my need for space when triggers arose, and celebrated my successes without jealousy. When I finally told him the full story of the stabbing, he listened without interruption. His only reaction, a gentle hand covering mine when my voice shook. "Thank you for trusting me with that," he said afterward. "I'm so sorry that happened to you, and I'm amazed by your strength in rebuilding your life." Senior year brought my first major photography exhibition focused on the theme of invisible wounds and healing. The university gallery showcased 20 of my pieces, large format photographs, paired with handwritten excerpts from my journal. Without explicitly mentioning my family, the exhibition told the story of trauma and recovery through powerful visual metaphors. The opening night attracted more attention than I expected. A local arts magazine covered it, and a small gallery owner approached me about future opportunities. As I stood among the crowd listening to people discuss my work, I felt a sense of victory that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with reclaiming my narrative. Graduation came with honors and a job offer from a documentary production company in Chicago. Daniel proposed the following month, a simple question asked on the shore of Lake Michigan at sunrise. We bought our first home together a year later. Nothing fancy, but it had large windows that filled the rooms with natural light and enough space for both a photography studio and Daniel's film editing equipment. I created the stable environment I had never had growing up, a home where voices weren't raised in anger, where accomplishments were celebrated regardless of who achieved them, where mistakes were met with understanding rather than criticism. The healing wasn't linear. I still had nightmares, occasionally still flinched at sudden movements, still struggled with accepting praise. But the trajectory was upward each year, bringing more peace than the last. The hardest moments came during holidays and milestones. No matter how wonderful my chosen family was, there remained a small wounded part of me that grieved for the biological family I wished I had. Daniel understood these moments, holding space for my sadness without trying to fix it. "It's okay to miss the idea of them," he told me once. "That doesn't invalidate your decision to protect yourself from the reality of them." We created our own traditions to fill those spaces. Thanksgiving became a gathering of holiday orphans friends without local family, or those estranged from relatives. Christmas morning meant volunteering at a youth shelter before opening gifts. My birthday always included writing a letter to my younger self, acknowledging her pain and celebrating her survival. By my 27th birthday, I had built a life that 16-year-old Arya couldn't have imagined professional success. Genuine friendships, a loving partnership, and most importantly, inner peace. I had not spoken to my parents or Jade in 11 years. Then came the Facebook message that shattered my carefully constructed equilibrium. I was reviewing photographs in my home office when the notification appeared. Grace Matthews, my mother, had sent me a message. My hands trembled so badly I had to put down my coffee before clicking on it. Arya, I hope this message finds you well. It's been a long time and we've been thinking about you. Jade is getting married in August and would like you to be there. Let us know if you're interested in reconnecting, Mom. The casual tone, as if she were inviting an old acquaintance to lunch, rather than reaching out to the daughter who fled after being stabbed, left me speechless. No acknowledgement of the years of silence, no mention of why I had left no apology. Just a wedding invitation, and the presumptuous signature of Mom, a role she had abdicated long ago. I showed the message to Daniel, who read it with a deepening frown. "Are you okay?" he asked, setting aside the phone to focus on me. "I don't know," I answered honestly. I never expected to hear from them again. "I'm not sure what I'm feeling." "You don't need to respond right away," he reminded me. "Or at all, if that's what you want." I didn't respond that day or the next. The message lingered in my mind, disrupting my sleep and concentration. I discussed it in my next therapy session, trying to untangle my conflicted emotions. "Part of me wants to know why now after 11 years, I told Diane. "Another part is afraid to find out." "Those are valid questions and concerns," she replied. "What would make responding feel safer for you?" I decided to send a brief neutral response. "Thank you for reaching out. I'm surprised to hear from you after so many years. I need to think about this. I hope Jade is happy." My mother's reply came within an hour, much longer, and more revealing than her initial message. "Arya, we're so glad you responded. Jade's engagement has made us reflect on family, and your absence has been noticed. Extended family and old friends keep asking about you, especially since your photography career has gained attention. We told everyone you were away at school all these years, but that explanation doesn't work anymore, since people have seen your exhibitions online. Jade's fiancé's family is very traditional and values complete family presence at the wedding. It would mean a lot to us if you would attend and help present a united front. We can discuss the past and move forward. Your father and I believe it's time you put the teenage drama behind you and stopped making us look bad by staying away." I read the message 3 times each reading, revealing more of the true motivation. It wasn't about missing me or regretting the past. It was about appearances, social pressure, and their discomfort at having to explain my absence. The phrase teenage drama, to describe being stabbed and blamed for it, was particularly telling. Before I could process this fully, my phone chimed with another notification. This time a text message from an unknown number. "Arya, it's Jade. Mom said she contacted you about my wedding. Just so we're clear, this isn't my idea. My future in-laws are big on family unity, and your absence is becoming awkward to explain. If you come, I expect you to be civil and not make this about you or bring up ancient history. This is my special day." No apology, no acknowledgement. Just more demands and a clear message that my presence was required solely for appearances. The next day brought an email from my father, his first communication in 11 years. The subject line read, "Family obligations, setting the tone for the content." "Arya, your mother tells me she's been in touch about Jade's wedding. I'm adding my voice to emphasize the importance of family loyalty, regardless of past disagreements. Your continued absence has created unnecessary complications. Several business associates who know I have 2 daughters have asked about you recently after seeing your name associated with a photography exhibition. Your actions reflect on this family, and it's time you considered how your choices affect others. The wedding is August 15th. We expect your confirmation soon." The barrage of contact continued over the next week. My mother sent daily messages alternating between guilt trips. "After everything we did for you, this is how you repay us." Faux concern. "We've always worried about your emotional stability. and thinly veiled threats. If you can't do this small thing for your sister, we'll have to be honest with everyone about why you left. The emotional impact was overwhelming. Nightmares about the stabbing returned. I found myself checking locks repeatedly, jumping at sudden noises, losing my appetite. Daniel watched with growing concern, offering support, but respecting my need to work through this myself. "They still don't see me," I told him one night, tears streaming down my face. "They see a problem to be managed, an obligation to fulfill, an inconvenience to explain away. After 11 years, nothing has changed." Sarah, still my close friend years after our dorm days, came over with ice cream and righteous anger after I shared screenshots of the messages. "The audacity," she fumed. "They're worried about looking bad. They should be worried about being bad people." I scheduled an emergency session with Diane, bringing copies of all the communications. She read them carefully, her expression professional, but her eyes reflecting sadness. "What do you want, Arya?" she asked when she finished reading. "Not what they want, not what might make peace, but what do you truly want?" The question cut through the noise of obligation and guilt. What did I want? Safety, truth, acknowledgement, none of which these messages offered. "I don't want to attend a wedding where I'm just a prop in their perfect family illusion," I said finally. "I don't want to pretend the past didn't happen. I don't want to be around Jade, who has never acknowledged stabbing me, let alone apologized for it." "Then those are your boundaries," Diane said simply. "You have every right to them." With clarity about my boundaries, I crafted a response to my family. I sent the same message to all three of them. "I've given your messages careful consideration. I will not be attending the wedding. My absence from your lives was not a teenage drama to overcome or a ploy to make you look bad. It was a necessary step to protect myself after years of emotional neglect, culminating in physical violence. I wish Jade happiness in her marriage, but I cannot pretend we are a united family when no acknowledgement or healing of the past has occurred. If you're genuinely interested in reconciliation someday, it would need to begin with honesty about what happened and a commitment to counseling. Until then, I respectfully ask that you stop contacting me." The responses came quickly and predictably. My mother claimed I was being selfish and dramatic. My father accused me of attention-seeking and disloyalty. Jade sent a single message: "This is exactly why no one wanted you around anyway." Their reactions, while painful, confirmed I had made the right decision. What surprised me were the messages that followed from extended family members. Apparently, my parents had shared a selective version of our exchange with relatives, resulting in a flurry of contact from aunts, uncles, and cousins I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. Some messages were accusatory. "How can you abandon your sister on her special day?" Others were pleading, "Family should stick together despite differences." But a few were different, expressing confusion about the situation. "We were told you were studying abroad all these years." Or, "Your parents said you chose to live with your father's relatives in California after high school." The conflicting stories my parents had told over the years were unraveling, and in their desperation to maintain appearances, they had created a tangled web of lies. A few relatives seemed genuinely concerned when I briefly explained that I had left home at 16 after a physical altercation that my parents refused to acknowledge. "I never knew," my mother's sister wrote. "They always changed the subject when anyone asked about you directly." As painful as this renewed contact was, it sparked an idea. For years, I had used photography to process my experiences, but I had never directly addressed my family's story in my work. Perhaps it was time to tell my truth, not for revenge, but for healing both my own and potentially others. I began working on a new photography series titled Invisible Wounds. Using self-portraits, symbolic objects, and landscape imagery, I created a visual narrative of family abuse, gaslighting, and eventual recovery. Each piece was accompanied by a short, honest statement about the experience it represented, without naming names or explicit details that would identify my family. Working on the series was emotionally exhausting, but ultimately cathartic. I poured 11 years of unspoken truths into these images, transforming pain into art that might help others recognize their own experiences. The exhibition opened at a prominent Chicago gallery 6 months later. The response was overwhelming. Art critics praised its raw honesty and technical excellence. Several local news outlets covered the opening, but most meaningful were the quiet conversations with visitors who saw themselves in my images, who whispered "me too," and left with resource information I had made available. 2 weeks after the opening, I received an email from my father. The subject line read "Legal Notice. Your so-called art exhibition contains false representations of our family that constitute defamation. Remove these images from public display immediately, or we will pursue legal action. You have 48 hours to comply." And I forwarded the email to Andrea, the lawyer who had helped with my emancipation years ago and who had remained a supportive presence in my life. Her response was reassuring. "They have no legal ground to stand on. You haven't named them, and truth is an absolute defense against defamation. Besides, you have medical records documenting the stabbing and the court records from your emancipation. Keep doing your important work. I've got your back if they try anything." Emboldened by this support and the positive impact of the exhibition, I sent one final message to my parents. "I understand you're upset about my art exhibition. I've created work based on my lived experience, which I have every right to do. I've never publicly named you or sought to harm you personally. What I've done is refuse to continue the silence that protected the family image at the expense of my well-being. My door remains open for genuine reconciliation that begins with acknowledgement of the past, but I will not be threatened or silenced. I hope someday you can see that healing is possible, but only through truth." They never responded. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned they had told people I was mentally unstable and creating fictitious stories for attention. Jade's wedding came and went. My absence was explained away as another example of my difficult personality and artistic temperament. But something unexpected happened as well. Two of my cousins reached out after seeing my exhibition online, sharing their own experiences of manipulative dynamics within the extended family. My mother's younger sister visited Chicago specifically to see my show and took me to dinner afterward. "I always sensed something was wrong," she admitted. "But your mother was so convincing when she said you were just rebellious and difficult. I should have asked more questions." "I'm sorry." That conversation was the closest thing to family acknowledgement I had received in 11 years, and it helped heal a wound I hadn't realized was still so raw. The following spring, Daniel and I were married in a small ceremony by Lake Michigan. My chosen family surrounded us, Taylor and Sarah, as my bridesmaids. Mrs. Garcia reading a poem during the ceremony, colleagues and friends filling the seats where biological family might have sat in another life. As we exchanged vows, I felt no absence, only gratitude for the authentic connections that filled my life. In the quiet moments after the reception, Daniel found me looking out at the lake, lost in thought. "Any regrets?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Not a single one," I answered truthfully. "Every step of the journey, even the painful ones, led me here." 2 months after our wedding, I received an unexpected package. Inside was a battered shoebox containing childhood photographs my mother had kept, school pictures, candid shots, moments I had forgotten. There was no note, no explanation. Perhaps it was an olive branch, or perhaps she was simply clearing space. I chose to see it as the former, a small acknowledgement of my existence and right to my own history. I added these photographs to the life I had built, not as a reconnection to my past, but as reclamation of it. They belonged in my story, just as the painful parts did, just as the triumph of survival did. Looking toward the future, Daniel and I discussed starting a photography workshop for teens from troubled homes, creating a space where they could process their experiences through art as I had. The cycle of pain that had defined my family for generations would end with me. Any children we might have would know security, validation, and unconditional love from their first breath. I realized that the most powerful lesson of my journey was this: sometimes walking away isn't giving up, it's the ultimate form of self love. Building boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for healing. And family isn't defined by blood, but by who shows up, who sees you truly, who celebrates your joy and holds space for your pain. The scared 16-year-old who fled with a backpack and a wounded shoulder had become a woman standing firmly in her truth, surrounded by love she had carefully cultivated, living a life rich with meaning and purpose. That was a victory no one could take away. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved for your own well-being? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more stories about finding strength after family trauma. Remember, choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's sometimes the only path to healing. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to honor your own journey, whatever it may be.